friends, my name is Marines, and today I'm going to be wrapping up the next bunch of books that I read. Book number 8 was Fever Dream by Samantha Scweblin, translated by Megan McDowell. This is a short literary fiction story about a woman who lies on her deathbed with a child next to her, not her own child, and this child is almost helping her through the events that led her to this point, to the point of her dying. Fever Dream is a very apt title for this book as it was very trippy and immersive, and the reading experience just left me feeling off balance. Perhaps even more so because I was very much expecting some kind of larger idea or metaphor to become clear to me as I kept reading, and if there was one by the end of this story, I certainly didn't see it. It was just this mash of desperation and mysticism, and man, it was weird. You'll come out on the end of it thinking that it was either pointlessly weird or entertainingly weird, and I happen to fall in the latter category. I also want to give some credit to McDowell, and while I haven't read the original Spanish version, you could really tell that through her translation, McDowell was able to keep the very creepy air. Overall, I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Book number 9 was 13 Reasons Why by J. Asher. There's been a lot of hype surrounding this book because it has been adapted into a Netflix series, which I'm sure you guys have heard of. My intention was to maybe recap the series for Snark Squad, especially because we're about to wrap up a series of unfortunate events. But first I wanted to read the book so I could have a basis of commenting on the TV show as an adaptation. And man oh man. This is a YA contemporary about a girl who leaves a series of tapes for people who ultimately had a bearing on her decision to commit suicide. There is a message here that I think resonates with people, one of being careful of our actions and how we treat others and what we say to them. While I can see and acknowledge that intention, and I understand why this resonated with people, what I personally found here was a story with an irresponsible message, written in a way that lacked the emotional depth or nuance to give the subject the weight that it deserved. The story itself is very linear. Even though we're listening to Hannah describe past events, the main action of the story is pulled along by Clay, and his thoughts lead us in a very I did this and then I did this and then I did this kind of way. This, coupled with Asher's descriptionless and plain writing, really made this whole thing seem very disconnected to me. It was almost too simplistic, it moved too fast, and it was too easily consumed. Repetition and lack of skill, and an idea that wasn't fully fleshed out, turned this into a reductive description of suicide. Hannah becomes secondary to her own story because it's all framed around the tapes. Her story is divorced from any kind of larger discussion or exploration of mental health. It's centered on a post-mortem act of almost revenge and depicted as closure. But basically, I didn't enjoy the story from a storytelling perspective, from the writing, from the character's perspective, and then it was made even worse by the irresponsibility of the messaging. There's truly no one that I would recommend this book to, so I ended up giving it 1 out of 5 stars. Book number 10 was The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. I've already done a standalone review of this, so you can check it out in the link. I ended up giving this YA contemporary, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement, 5 out of 5 stars. While I had some quibbles about the story, about the kind of laggy beginning, and some places the writing I felt could have been tightened up, the more I sat with this story, the more I appreciated all of the layers of what Thomas created here. It was a sincere and heartfelt story full of pain and hurt, but also family and friendship and humor and even hints of healing. All of the hype that you've heard about this book is well deserved. Book number 11 was a reread of Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, which I don't know if I've ever shown you this copy of it that I have, because I have multiple copies, but this one is so soft and so pretty. This is reread number a lot of this book for me. I first started reading it in my freshman year of high school, and I picked it up not for required reading, but just for funsies, and I totally fell in love with it. Since then, I've been rereading it once every year or year and a half, so again, I've read this book a lot. I've found that the last 3 or 4 times that I've read it, I've been super drawn to Jane as a main character. She's so even and steady, but also witty and funny and I love her true sense of right and wrong and how it steadies her and guides her in the face of everything that happens to her throughout the story. That, coupled with my new ability to see just how creepy Mr. Rochester really is, has made rereading this in my late 20s and now that I'm 30 certainly different from when I was reading it as a teenager in high school, but I don't love it any less. In fact, I love it more every time that I read it. So, yearly reread, done. Book number 12 was a manga, My Hero Academia by Koji Horikoshi. This was recommended to me on Twitter, and again, I see all kinds of things on Twitter and I never think to like note it down. I forget why somebody gave me the recommendation, but I actually scooped it right up and bought the first volume and read it all in a single day. This is about a boy who dreams of becoming a superhero and getting into the best hero school, but he doesn't have any kind of powers. Things change for him when he meets his idol though, a hero named All Might. I love, love, love hero stories, and this one was right up my alley. As a first volume, this does have some piloty things about it, and just kind of that feeling that it is setting up everything in the world and all the characters. I'll also say that I sometimes got a little lost in the action in the way that it was drawn. I mentioned this in my first wrap-up video, but I feel like I don't have the vocabulary to really review mangas yet, but really what I'm trying to say is that something about the drawing style was a little bit convoluted, and I had to sometimes go back to make sure that I was tracking the action correctly. On the positive side, I love the main character. I know he comes off as a little bit whiny, but I thought he was precious, and from what we've seen so far of him, very pure-hearted. Even though a portion of the story is set off by a chance meeting with All Might, we see Izuku working really hard towards his goals, and I appreciated that. I ended up giving this 4 stars, and I also picked up the next few volumes and plan to pepper these in throughout my reading in the next coming months. That's it for me today. If you've read any of the books that I've mentioned, or if you're interested in reading any of them, let's chat down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys soon.